Hi everyone! Welcome to ArtStoryLab. My name is Haejin. Do you guys remember the music video for Ape Shit by Beyoncé and Jay-Z that came out in 2018? Shot in the Musée du Louvre in Paris, it was quite the sensation, featuring the Carters, the biggest power couple in the American music industry, along with black dancers performing impressive choreographies in front of the museum's masterpieces. As a Beyoncé fan and an art historian, I was totally awestruck by this powerful display of black creativity in the world's largest collection of European art. My favorite moment in the video happens almost at the end, after the long sequence of black performers juxtaposed to artworks depicting mostly white Europeans by white artists, when the video shows very briefly this striking portrait painted in 1800 by the French woman artist named Marie-Guillemine Benoist. This painting, simply titled The Portrait of a Black Woman, was displayed at the Louvre in 1800 at the Salon exhibition, featuring works by contemporary artists in France and abroad. From this engraving showing the view of the exhibition in 1800, you can pick out the portrait prominently displayed in this chaotic arrangement of paintings hanging from floor to ceiling. The Portrait of a Black Woman is arguably one of the best-known portraits in Europe from the turn of the 19th century, and it has been an enigma for a great many art historians attempting to decode its meanings. That's because there's almost nothing known about the portrait's unnamed sitter. It has been widely assumed that it portrays a formerly enslaved African woman who was brought to Paris from the Caribbean island colony of Guadeloupe by the artist Benoist's brother-in-law to work as a servant in the French metropole. And after exhibiting the painting at the Salon, the artist kept it in her studio until her death in 1826, so it was unlikely to have been commissioned by anyone. Given these minimal details about the sitter, art historians have generally been divided into two competing explanations for the painting. Some have seen it as a noble portrayal of a black woman and an artistic tribute to the abolition of slavery in the French colonies in 1794. They interpret the sitter's dignified beauty as a testament to the newfound liberty and equality for formerly enslaved black people in the French colonies. Other art historians have criticized the sitter's anonymity and what they perceive as an erasure of her autonomy as an individual in the portrait. For example, one scholar has argued that the painter Benoist, a white woman artist whose family likely supported slavery, used the unusual choice of a black female model to make a name for herself as a painter. Another historian explains that with this portrait, Benoist asserted her social position as a white upper-class woman through the representation of a formerly enslaved African woman, and in the process, the painting ends up, quote, robbing the black sitter of her identity, her voice, and her agency, end quote. In the eyes of these critics, the anonymous black woman looks out at the viewer with a vacant look, holding her gown from revealing any more of her body and causing her even more humiliation. Contemporaries of Benoist were equally divided in their reactions to the painting. What made this portrait a controversial image in 1800 is that it depicts a black woman in the way white aristocratic women have been portrayed, in the way no black women have been portrayed before. Before this work, the prevailing mode of depicting black people in European art was to include them as slaves owned by white sitters. As these examples from the late 1600s show, black slave boys and girls served as accessories to highlight the alabaster skin of white aristocrats and to symbolize white Europeans' political and economic power in the colonial system. In contrast, the image of the recently emancipated black woman from the Caribbean proclaimed that a black woman was worthy of being the subject of a portrait to be displayed at the Salon, the largest art exhibition in France. At the same time, in 1800, 6 years after the abolition of slavery, pro-slavery movement was regaining support in France, which eventually led to the reintroduction of slavery by Napoleon in 1802. Little wonder that the portrait drew mixed opinion when it was exhibited. Some critics were exasperated by the picture's unprecedented treatment of a free black woman as a portrait subject, while others praised the painting's neoclassical beauty, making reference to Benoist's famous teacher Jacques-Louis, who was celebrated, among other things, for his portraits of white upper-class French women in the 1790s in the style emulating classical antiquity. Like David's white sitters, the unnamed black woman in Benoist's portrait dons a loose-fitting white cotton dress, seated on a luxurious chair draped with a deep blue shawl. She is depicted in a three-quarter view in between a frontal and profile view, looking at the viewer squarely with a reserved expression. Her right arm rests on her lap, while the left hand holds up her dress that reveals her right breast. She sports a white head wrap and gold hoop earrings. According to the art historian Amelia Rauser, the white cotton dress, the head wrap, and the gold hoops were all fashion elements of free and enslaved women in the Caribbean, which were enthusiastically adopted by white European women as fashionable accessories in the 1790s in an act of cultural appropriation. In creating this unprecedented portrayal of a free black woman in the neoclassical style, the biggest challenge for Benoist was representing black skin at a time when it was becoming increasingly politicized. Rendering the color of flesh was traditionally considered the highest achievement in the art of coloring for painters. According to the art historian Mechthild Fend, the so-called black skin began to be established as a marker for African slaves in the context of colonial expansion and Atlantic slave trade in the 18th century. European theorists in medicine and the emerging discipline of anthropology began to take interest in what makes skin color and where it's located in the human body. Artistic representation of black skin, as a scholar Anne Lafont explains, was central to this project of dividing the human species according to skin color. Painters' choice in the physical material and the methods for depicting black skin contributed directly to this construction of race based on the visual perception of external bodily signs. Indeed, Benoist's treatment of the anonymous sitter's skin is quite different from the way she represented white skin. As the art historian Darcy Grimaldo Grigsby has observed, the artist produced the deep skin color in the portrait of a black woman by building up gradations of closely related hues of brown, orange, and black. This was done to focus on the skin's surface appearance, which reduces the amount of detail visible in the shaded parts of the figure. This is in stark contrast to the treatment of white skin seen in this portrait of Jeanne Glemourque, the wife of an important pro-slavery government official and her son, created just 2 years after the portrait of a black woman. In rendering the skin of the woman and child in this portrait, Benoist used layers of yellows and pinks for the flushed cheeks and fingertips, and greens and blues for veins. In so doing, the white skin appears as a translucent layer, revealing the living, pulsing body underneath, whose diaphanous delicacy is reinforced by the gauzy sleeves of the woman's dress. Encased in this dark, opaque surface of her skin, the free black woman in Benoist's portrait displays an indelible marker of racial difference that separated her from her white viewers at the Salon exhibition. And with her direct gaze, she questions the position of black women in French society at the historical juncture between abolition and reintroduction of slavery. But is there a different way of looking at this portrait? Is there a way out of this impasse, a way beyond this interpretation of the anonymous woman as either lacking autonomy or representing liberty for black people? And more generally, do we have to know who the sitter is and what Marie-Guillemine Benoist wanted to communicate in this portrait in order to derive meaning from it? That's the question that the historian Cécile Bishop has raised. She has pointed out that our desire to know the sitter's identity is based on the same premise that informed the theoretical racism of 1800, that assumed that external bodily appearance should reveal the internal substance of a person's identity. Because their skin was thought too dark, too opaque to reflect their inner thoughts and feelings, black people were consistently denied their own personhood and autonomy. And as that idea continues to prove extremely dangerous and toxic today, we're perpetuating the same kind of violence by insisting that the anonymous black woman's painted likeness on canvas reveal who she is and what she stands for. While shedding light on the blind spot in our desire for transparency, Cécile Bishop proposes that we think of the portrait's central theme of skin as a way of empathizing with the sitter. We will never know who she is or what she's thinking, but we do know that she thinks and feels as we share with her the very condition of having a skin. So in the end, what do I think of the painting? Talking about it in 2020, I can't see the portrait of a black woman without thinking about Beyoncé and Jay-Z's music video with which I began this story. After 5 minutes and 37 seconds of dazzling celebration of Black artistry, power, beauty, and movement in the temple of whiteness that is the Louvre, the portrait appears right after the Great Sphinx of Tanis, a symbol of the powerful ancient Egyptian civilization that predated Greco-Roman antiquity. The unnamed black woman in Benoist's portrait emerges with an air of inviolable disdainful pride. In my eyes, with her unblinking stare, like that of the Great Sphinx, she doesn't care about what we think of her skin, her body, or how she fits into our world. What she's contemplating is whether and how we fit into hers. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. See you next time on ArtStoryLab.